Les questions que mes générations se posent sont les suivantes, si je peux me résumer. C'est de ne pas comprendre comment l'Afrique, avec tant de richesses sur notre sol, avec une nature généreuse, de l'eau, du soleil en abondance, l'Afrique est aujourd'hui le continent le plus pauvre. L'Afrique est un continent affamé. Et comment se fait-il que les chefs d'État traversent donc le monde à mendier? Voici des questions que nous nous posons et que nous n'avons pas de réponse jusque-là. Nous avons l'occasion de tisser de nouvelles relations. Et j'espère que ces relations puissent être les meilleures pour donner un meilleur avenir à nos peuples. Pour ce qui concerne le Burkina Faso, aujourd'hui nous sommes confrontés depuis plus de 8 ans à la forme de manifestation la plus barbare, la plus violente du néocolonialisme, de l'impérialisme. L'esclavage qu'on tend encore à nous imposer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 22nd episode of the 1804. Today, I have my friend and guest, Travis Ross, joining us today. If you don't know, Travis is in charge of the Canada-Haiti Information Project, has been doing activism for quite some time now. He'll get into that. Travis has also written mainly for, obviously, Canada-Haiti Info Project, Haiti Liberté, based in New York, the Canada Files, the Black Agenda report, as well as rabble.ca. Travis, how are you today?
Very good, thanks. Happy to be here.
Nice to have you. So before we start, just give my audience, in terms of how you got into this and how you started getting into necessary activism, and specifically the topic of Haiti.
Yeah, I was trying to nail down dates, so don't quote me any of this stuff. But basically, around 2008, I started getting involved with Haiti Action in Montreal. Mm-hmm. There was a strong Haiti solidarity movement in Montreal, and started meeting with them. That eventually, within about a year and a half, led to a lot of organizing, and kind of collectively we brought Mario Joseph from the BAI and Ray Adal from SUPUDA up on a speaking tour in Montreal and Ottawa. It was really successful. But after that, the activism side kind of died down, not just for me personally, but just generally in Canada.
Yeah.
There were active solidarity groups in many major cities. But after that, a lot of activists either moved on to other topics or got occupied with other things. And there were a handful of solidarity activists kind of continued to follow Haiti. So my interest shifted to helping maintain what was the Canada-Haiti Action Network website at the time, along with Roger Annis and Ralph Paul. And by about 2012, 2013, 14, somewhere in that range, Roger Annis took a step back. Sorry, I should say he's one of the two founders of the Canada-Haiti Action Network.
Okay.
But in that time, we had made the decision that the name had to change. It was giving the false impression that there was an activist network in Canada, and hadn't been for years at that point. So it was changed to the Canada-Haiti Information Project. And Roger stayed on, kind of, advising personal friends, kind of thing, talking. But at that point, it really was Ralph Paul and I who were running the site. And the first priority with the meager funds we had was to open up a French homepage, because essentially that's how we work. Ralph updates the French page, I update the English page.
Okay,
it's largely news gathering. So we have generally speaking, the same editorial view. Chat every 6 to 8 weeks for a few hours. But I'm coming here to you as a writer and a journalist, and less so as a co-editor for the Canada-Haiti Information Project.
Yeah, nice. So we'll get into it. We'll go into it here. And the first thing I want to discuss was from the part 2 of the article you had written on the Canada files. I'll pull it up here and just to show the title to people. All right, and for those who haven't read it yet, I'll get back to here, but this was a article Travis Ross written on Canada files. This is part 2 of the 3 parts, but what I'm focusing on is part 2, the Canadian imperialism in Haiti, Haiti's controlled opposition, and the Global Fragility Act. So part of this, in terms of the Global Fragility Act, I've already covered it in episode 2021. Although there's not that much information coming out from the States other than that bill and the announcement. This is something you can go back and check if you want to look. You're more interested in the Global Fragility Act, and also refer to this article because I've covered it based on this. So I'll read this quote, Travis, and I'll ask you my question. I had something found. Or something interesting I found here, and I'll pull it up to make sure I have everything. Washington is desperate to keep so-called fragile states like Haiti from developing diplomatic relations with China and Russia and potentially joining in investments project like the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, or BRICS. Jovenel Moise, who was assassinated over 2 years ago, learned that this lesson the hard way. Mired in corruption and increasingly isolated from Haiti's oligarchs, Moise established formal diplomatic relations with Moscow only 1 month before his assassination. Accrediting Russian ambassador Sergei Milik Bagdasarov, it was the first time Haiti had established diplomatic relations with Russia. Many argued that this was a factor which led Washington to greenlight Moise's assassination. So going back so my question is, we're talking about here kind of Washington, kind of real and desperate states and generals. But and this is something I thought about yesterday. Why do you think the U.S., in terms of, we know what their intentions are, but why do you think the U.S. hasn't taken the Chinese approach to foreign policy, even if it's under the guise of they want to have control or influence? Why do you think they've taken more of an aggressive rather than, I'd say, a softer approach like China? And what I mean by that, China, like most of their work when they do go into, like, for example, the African countries, oftentimes they offer infrastructure. And if you don't go through the history of the United States specifically, there's not much, although there's always been funding for some type of infrastructure, building schools. There has been some in the past, but in terms of significant difference, there hasn't been any significant project from the Americans. So I was wondering, what do you think about that?
That's a big one. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's sometimes some window dressing of maybe investing in a hospital or building a school, but speaking more broadly, the U.S. schools are imperialist. So, and a big factor in that is the arms industry, the military-industrial complex. So it doesn't follow the logic of their own foreign policy or imperialistic policy to, let's say, like, do what China does and actually try to make friends and have investments that are fair, and trade and so on. I don't come from the school of thought that China itself is imperialist in any way. So they're two totally different, like, types of foreign policy. And the United States, even when it has the veneer of seemingly being friendly or benevolent, you dig a little deeper and you find out that they have their own self-interest.
Makes sense.
Motivating it.
Yeah. No, because I always find what everything is I agree with. I just find it funny because now it's not a thing. Like, most people, like, if you're following what's going on in the world, you kind of see what's American stance. But for me, putting myself in their shoes, the government, whoever's leading charge, I'd be like, my approach would be like, okay, well, people know our history. Like, shouldn't we maybe take, because through USA they pour out billions. So I'm like, to me, I'm like in my head, like, shouldn't we maybe try, although maybe our intentions are not what China's intentions are, shouldn't we maybe change our approach if we're gonna if we're gonna be throwing this USAID money in all the countries that we necessarily kind of occupy as a neo colony? I always thought about that. And just to point out, just to show the audience here, just to show you some projects from the Silk Belt and Road Initiative. This is from Wikipedia, so I'm not a big advocate for Wikipedia, but I think for simple things like that, they are pretty accurate. But just to show you in Algeria, China is now developing Algeria's El Hamadia Central Port, Algeria's largest and first deep water port and the second deep water port in Africa. China also completed the 750-mile east-to-west highway that connects Algeria with neighboring Morocco and Tunisia, and about 1,000 Chinese companies operate in Algeria. Their way eased by waiver of the 5149 requirement. And even in Djibouti, in total, the Export-Import Bank of China has lent approximately $1 billion to Djibouti, funding nearly 40% of Djibouti's substantial substantial infrastructure and investment projects. Due to the Belt and Road Initiative, Ethiopia and Djibouti are now bridged through Addis Ababa Djibouti Railway and Ethiopia Djibouti Water Pipeline. So these are some of the projects that, again, these cost billions either through loans or China doing it. Non-concession loans. So oftentimes China will give out these loans at like 0% or 0.01. So giving money at no interest. Or they'll go in and do it, themselves part of the whatever deal they made with that government. So, no, that's interesting. I just think that if the U.S., not to say I don't know if they would succeed, but I think if the U.S. kind of took a different approach, whatever their intentions are, I think they'd be slightly more successful. Because right now, the people that are paying attention knows, like, the people know what the U.S.'s attitude is. And people know what China's approach is as well to foreign policy, right? So
I think people outside of like the West, maybe like China is still largely demonized, and
yes,
the context of Haiti doesn't have a good reputation either.
Yeah.
But I mean, just look at the countries who are willing to sign on to the United States' project to like occupy Haiti physically. Like they are able to find some countries to sign on, and those countries are generally speaking run by authoritarians or dictators and so on.
True.
So
exactly.
That's why you and I will never get a job at the State Department or the NED. You know, we understand that logic, but the logic isn't to like make any friends, right?
No, makes sense.
Logic is to secure resources. So, I mean, you said you already discussed the Global Fragility Act. I won't go into too much detail. It's been compared by the commentators to the Monroe Doctrine, and in that sense, there's some similarities.
That's true,
but there's some differences too. It's largely, it was created to keep China and Russia out of these specific countries.
Yeah,
because they don't want China and Russia securing natural resources, and that's like fundamental to empire, is securing minerals and oil. So, and which, like as many people know, Haiti is suspected to have like vast mineral and oil resources. I think in terms of mineral, that's been confirmed. Oil, I haven't done the research to be sure, but
there was some found. Yeah, there's some rumors of oil. There was exploitation back in the 70s, 80s as well. There's been companies in the past, but there was there's oil rigs in the Dominican Republic. But there was a video, and I wish I had it here, but they're showing thing, and nothing confirms it. But near the border between the Dominican Republic and Haiti, there was like a video of like oil like pouring out of the ground. So there's definitely some untapped resources there that maybe that hasn't been discovered or hasn't been put to use really for exploitation.
When you look at American foreign policy elsewhere, like Bolivia, they helped foment and then support a coup there.
Yeah, that's true.
Or like the lithium resources. And that's that's laid out not so much in the act itself as the Global Fragility Act, but it is laid out by a lot of the think tank people. Whether it's the American Enterprise Institute or Carnegie, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're all essentially saying the same thing.
Yeah.
The Global Fragility Act first came out. They hadn't named the countries yet. They hadn't named Haiti. It was specifically about there's these fragile countries, and the discussion was mostly in the context of terrorism and countries like Somalia.
Yeah.
Even though that Somalia didn't have falling under the Global Fragility Act, and how to deal with that kind of fragility that, for the most part, American foreign policy has caused.
Yeah.
And how to keep, again, China and Russia out from securing those mineral and energy resources. And I don't want to like sidetrack the conversation too much. When you look at Ukraine, that kind of explanation is a lot of explanatory value for Ukraine as well.
Yeah,
where like the Nord Stream pipeline was,
yeah,
in all likelihood, blown up by the United States in order to prevent parts of Europe to become dependent or having a closer relationship with Russia, and instead import that stuff across the ocean.
They want to sell their LNG.
Yeah, they want that liquefied natural gas coming by the boatload.
Yeah,
the risk of being like dumped into the ocean and like polluting it even further, rather than doing something which I know the pipelines go through the water, but is arguably less risky than
for sure
the environment than sending it by the boat.
That's facts.
And also, it costs much more. So the cost of energy for anyone dependent on that kind of energy is now gone up. So, and who benefits from that cost increase? The United States and the people who actually run that government. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I didn't. I'm happy you pointed out the link between the. I didn't make that link until you mentioned the link between the Monroe Doctrine and Global Fragility Act, because there's not much, like, they didn't give out much information about the Global Fragility Act. But if you go back, I mentioned it before, the Monroe Doctrine of 1823 essentially saying European powers, there's as on this half of the world here, if you try and colonize any territories here, we'll take it as an attack on the United States. We're not going to allow any type of influence here or any new colonies to shape in the Western Hemisphere. That was essentially the attitude that they had. And the Global Fragility Act, although it doesn't lay out the full details yet, it's still, the scope of it seems to be somewhat the same.
Yeah, and it's arguably another difference. Like, my interpretation, I'm not a historian, was the Monroe Doctrine was like friendlier in a sense. It was just drawing lines. It wasn't saying European powers, you can't go plunder other parts of the planet like Africa, like go ahead and plunder. It's just this particular area is now under our control. It's our backyard,
basically.
Whereas when it comes to the Global Fragility Act, and in the context of the war in Ukraine and the escalation towards the war over Taiwan, it's much more hostile. It's actually going into other countries and preventing investment, and then as far as the general foreign policy, which is trying to push back China and Russia's so-called influence.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Honestly, like, I'm curious to see. I think the last, well, just with what's going on in Haiti, Ukraine, and obviously the what's going on with China, Taiwan, it's been an interesting couple years in terms of like the power shifting and more governments looking to make moves on a geopolitical stance. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the next couple of years.
I just read yesterday that they tried to put in, possibly successfully, money for arms for Taiwan in a bill that was largely for Ukraine.
I read that, actually, yeah.
So, I mean, that, along with, considering what's happened in Mali and now in Niger, Burkina Faso, if you're like a savage imperialist running the U.S., then this is all frightening.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? It's good for the people there. Yeah. Hopefully it will be. They are military coups, but they also seem to have the support of the population because they're taking down Western-backed governments.
Yeah.
So in that context, their fears are real, but their fears are based on the fact that they're losing control of their ability to oppress and exploit huge swaths of the planet Earth.
Yeah, especially France. Like, I know in Niger they cut off France 24 TV. They kicked out they suspended all exports of their minerals to the States and France, and they recently kicked out a Canadian mining company. Although I don't know what this Canadian mining company was mining there, but kicked out that Canadian mining company, so their operations right now are suspended. But with that too, obviously they've been using, because I think you might have mentioned that to me yesterday or somewhere in an article, but around 30, if not 30 and 40% of their electricity comes from Nigeria. So parts of Niger are in blackout now because Nigeria has taken the stance, so far has taken the side of the imperialist to kind of like, they're taking a stance, oh, well, this is a illegal coup, we should put the restore order and stuff like that. So we got a few African countries, including Nigeria and Benin, that are actually taking the stance of the imperialists. Although I know Nigeria is more linked to has US and UK influence. I'm not sure for Benin, but they might have been a former French colony, except I'm not 100% sure on that. But they've taken
exactly
the stance
what we're talking about, like the it can't be a satisfactory situation for any country to have roughly half your electricity needs dependent on another country, right?
Right. Yeah.
So for that to be kind of the status quo, it's understandable that they're pushing back and even willing to go without electricity so they can then, work out deals with whether it be China or Russia to then start building infrastructure so they're not dependent on other states who are themselves beholden to
exactly
U.S. imperialists.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and everything
with Haiti, like you started with the paragraph on Moise building diplomatic relations with China, Russia, excuse me. Undoubtedly a major factor, probably what sealed the deal in terms of it being assassinated. But China itself had reached out and tried to offer large infrastructure deals around electricity and so on, and because of the political turmoil and the fact that Moise had lost complete control, it was just ignored. But these countries are willing to do it. They're willing to make friends and make long-term deals that benefit both sides in the end.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.